All right, you selling on Amazon in Canada or thinking about selling on Amazon in Canada, and you're saying to yourself, Amazon's saying they're not requiring a uh, GST number, which is the tax ID number for Canada. That's a good deal, right? Well, let's go into it. Now, just my quick disclaimer here is I am not a tax professional. I am a Amazon seller myself, and I help Amazon sellers expand into international marketplaces. So I'm just really giving you my personal opinion from what I've seen and kind of reading between the lines of where I think this may or may not be helpful for folks. So you can make the informed decision after doing your own research and speaking with a appropriate tax professional. So really, I just want to give you some food for thought and just kind of plant the seed on how some of these things might affect you. So first off, you're probably wondering, what is GST? So if you're even wondering what that means, it's the goods and services tax, goods and services tax. And then there's also HST, which is the harmonized sales tax. There's also what's called PST, which is provincial tax, but that only applies in certain provinces and it's becoming more being taken care of by Amazon in most provinces. So I'm not even going to get into that in this video. We're going to focus on the GST, HST, because I don't see as that requirement is going away. Now, again, talks to an appropriate tax professional. But let's go through, don't just take my word for what I'm about to say here and the scenarios I'm going to give you here at the end, which should at least kind of give you some food for thought of like, that's definitely something to think about. So let's talk about what is Amazon saying about all of this. So let's get into that here. So I'll have a link to this down below, the marketplace tax collection for FAQ. So you're probably familiar in the US, most states now, Amazon is a marketplace facilitator. So that is a similar terminology that they are using here. So marketplace facilitator, and I could probably zoom that in a bit. Marketplace facilitator is commonly defined as a business who contracts with third-party sellers, which Amazon would be that, to promote the sale of physical property, digital goods, and or services owned and operated by a third party through an online store. Based on this definition, Amazon is a marketplace facilitator. So, meaning they're facilitating the sale and the transaction. Then there's the marketplace tax collection, MTC, which means basically is a general term Amazon uses for marketplace facilitator tax legislation rules and identifies the party responsible to collect and remit tax, sales tax, for products shipped to a jurisdiction where marketplace facilitator laws have been enacted. So let me come off of this screen real quick and just give you my basic synopsis of what that means is at the end of the day, the governments are going to get their money either from you or from Amazon. Because at the end of the day, really the customer is paying, and who is funneling might not be the right word. Who's flowing that money to the government. And so an MTC, which should be the marketplace tax collection, it would be Amazon and you would be out of the scenario. So that sounds good, right? Well, let's get more into some of the additional what that means. So what is the difference between marketplace tax collection, MTC? So basically they're the marketplace facilitator, and tax collection services. So we already established that the MTC is when Amazon is responsible to calculate, collect, and remit sales taxes and or refund sales taxes. So basically, anytime the customer is paying sales tax, Amazon gives it to the applicable jurisdiction, which we'll just say in this case is the Canadian Revenue Agency for GST, and remit the taxes collected from the buyer directly to the tax authority according to the applicable legislation. So that's kind of a mouthful there, but basically, if there's rules involved that kind of put it on Amazon, then they would be responsible for it because the government just wants to make sure they're getting their money. And then there's the tax collection service, TCS, which is an optional service available to professional sellers on Amazon.ca to assist with their obligations to calculate taxes on products that they ship from and to a customer within Canada. Taxes calculated using TCS are dispersed to the seller to report and remit to the appropriate tax authority themselves. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh gosh, I don't want to have to be responsible for sending the money to the government. Now, there are some things to consider, which we'll get into here in a moment. Now, I'm going to point something else out, which I think might even more sway people to think like, oh, well, I just want to do the MTC where Amazon acts as the facilitator of the taxes and takes care of it. Because in Canada, your selling fees can be taxable. Basically, your um, based on where the fulfillment center is located, you might be charged GST, HST, basically the Canada Goods and Service Tax, HST tax. Um, then what this is basically saying here, and I can tell you because I've seen this with clients that I've dealt with who haven't put in a number, Amazon just won't Amazon won't charge you. You will be charged throughout the year on your fulfillment fees an additional, let's just say 10%. So let's just say it's a $5, just for the sake of math, a $5 um, fulfillment fee. And let's say it's a 10% GST in the location. It's all location specific. But let's just say it's 10%. So that's an additional 50 cents Canadian that you'd be paying. And you might be thinking, so I got to send the money to the government and I got to be charged for this. That's not worth it. That doesn't make any sense. Well, let's read between the lines on some more things. Now let's get outside of what Amazon's saying. So this is, as of today, which is February 2022, which this new rules have been around for a while now, at least for a few months. And I've been getting questions on anyway. And so this is the doing business in Canada for non-residents. So if you're outside of Canada, you're in Australia, US, UK, somewhere else, Europe, and you're selling on Amazon Canada, you're a non-resident. And so let me just show you, we're just going to search for 30, which is a magical number because the way the rules work there, you're a small supplier who basically means you don't have to register. Make more sense in this section here, but if you're a sole proprietor or a partnership or corporation, which if you have an LLC in the US, that would constitute, from all the conversations I've had with the Canadian Revenue Agency, that would constitute being a partnership or corporation. If you have $30,000 in sales or less in a calendar year, then you are not applicable to that. Now, you might be thinking, oh, but if I haven't started there yet in Canada, I don't have that. Well, here's this tricky little word they use, and that's worldwide. Worldwide taxable supplies. What on earth does that mean? Let's just say sales from taxable goods. So I've had many conversations with the Canadian Revenue Agency. They have 3 different offices. And I've asked this question over and over again. And the interpretation I've always gotten back from the Canadian Revenue Agency is that if your sales are above $30,000, and that's 30,000 Canadian dollars, which I'll get to here in just a second, you are required to register. Now, would they come after you if you weren't registered? I don't know, especially with MTC where they're getting their money. So do they really care? I don't know. Now, if you're selling off Amazon, maybe they might think about that. But at least with Amazon, Amazon's taking care of it. Now, but technically by the rules, you got to be filed for $30,000 in worldwide sales, which if you broke that into US dollars, that's about $23,500 at the time we're doing this. So definitely some food for thought. So at least from a compliant angle on that, you would need to be. So now you might be saying like, okay, but Kevin, you're making this seem like, why would I even bother? So let's go through a scenario. Let's just say, hypothetically speaking, you did register, and I'm going to show you in 2 different scenarios, whether you're MTC, where Amazon handles it, or TCS, tax calculation services, where They calculate it for you, and then they give you the taxes, and then you remit it to the government. I don't see in either scenario you would not want to at least be registered. And again, I'm not here to provide tax advice. I'm just showing you kind of what I've learned over the years in my many years of selling in Canada since 2016. So I have done quite a few filings, and I've spent hours on the phone with the Canadian Revenue Agency helping other sellers get registered as part of some of the services that I offer. So I've learned a few things along the way. So at least let this be some good food for thought here. So let's just say you are an MTC seller, meaning you did not put your GST number in tax settings in Canada. So if you did not put your GST HST number, which would be your business number, which is 9 digits, just like an EIN is in the US, employer identification number, the business number followed by RT 00001, generally speaking, would be your business number. If you didn't put that in that number, then here, the collected, well, I guess they're still collecting it, but nothing is being given to you. So maybe I should have said collected. I should have said collected and dispersed to you. So what you're receiving is zero because all that money just goes to the government. It just happens. Now, from what everything I've seen, there's two buckets of GST here. Now, these are both potential credits. Keep that in mind here. So, if you don't have your GST number in there because you're an MTC, which you're not checking anything off that says you're MTC, all you're doing is just not putting in a GST number, whether you're registered or not. So, if you just don't put in the GST number, you're automatically MTC for the calculation of all this, which again is marketplace tax calculation, which means the marketplace handles the calculation of taxes and remittance, meaning giving the government their money. So you're out of the equation, which for most sellers, that seems like the default would make the most sense. Now, here's the thing, you're going to be paying still GST when you go across the border. And every now and then I'll get people email me like, hey, I bought from a local supplier, but they want to charge me GST. Is that right? I'm like, I believe it is because GST is almost like value added tax light. So you have these credits. And so when you go across the border, you're basically introducing your products to the country for the first time. So you didn't buy it from a supplier within the country. So if you're going across the border, importing from China, from the US, from Mexico, from wherever, you're going to pay generally about a 5% GST at the border. Also, you might pay GST on top of your maybe brokerage fees or some other fees you might pay. So the GST portion, if there's duties, that doesn't count. But if there's GST, what's paid at the border is a credit. So if let's say over the course of 2022, so it's February of 2022 as I record this, let's say over the course of the year, you pay $2,000 at the border. Might not be all at once, maybe over several shipments, but you pay $2,000 at the border in GST. So, okay, great. So you could get that as a credit. So when you go to file, now filing is not that difficult. In fact, I have a video, which should be right up here in the corner there, where I walk through the previous year when I did my own filing, just so you at least kind of see what the process looks like. So hopefully, more than anything, it's not intimidating. And if you do hire somebody to go do your filings, at least you have an understanding of what the process is. It's Canada GST taxes are probably one of the simplest ones there. In fact, I've talked to people at the Canadian Revenue Agency who almost seem to take pride in that they make it simple. They're actually really friendly and really nice if you ever have to talk to anyone at the Canadian Revenue Agency. So anyway, side note, but you could get that money back as a refund. So what does that mean? $2,000 Canadian, let's just say you got back as a refund. And so generally, if you're on annual filing, which most people less than $1.5 million in sales in Canada are, you would get this back. So let's say you file by March 31st. So that'd be March 31st of 2023 if we're doing this for 2020. And then let's just say there's processing time. I don't know how long it takes them, but let's just say between processing time, they ship it out, snail mail. It's not going first class. It's not electronic. It's a check in the mail. And then you get this check. Let's say maybe it's now May or June because it just takes a little while. And these are possibilities. It could be faster than that. It could be slower than that, but just to kind of warn you. So you get this check for the $2,000 Canadian. You take that to, let's say, you go to Citibank or Chase in the US and you show them this Canadian check. They'll take it, but you will be holding up the line. I'll just warn you. And that's not going to go through on your phone because there's no routing an account number. I don't even remember what they call it there. There's something else that it's like routing an account, but it's different. So it's not going to automatically just go through without, like, the teller has to go get their manager to sign off on depositing that check. So there's a little bit of extra hassle. Then, but at least you got your money back. But in order to do this, you have to at least be registered. Otherwise, you just ate that $2,000. You got your $2,000. You did have to wait a little while. Now, here's where this other scenario is going to be more attractive. So this is the tax calculation service where the money is now you're responsible for. So let's just walk through this because this might look more appealing when I'm done with this of why you might want to do this. And so my microphone's kind of moving on me there. So anyway, so let's say tax calculation service, you have the GST number. You didn't make one up. You got a legit one, and they will check that it's a legit one. But let's just say you got the GST number. You put it in settings, tax settings when you're in Seller Central in Canada. You don't have to physically be in Canada. You just have to be in the Canadian marketplace when you put it in tax settings. But now they're going to collect the money and they're just going to give it to you. It's just part of your disbursements. So let's just say, these are made up numbers. So these are just illustration, but let's just say hypothetically, you collected 5,000 Canadian dollars in GST, HST over the course of the year. So that's $5,000. So that means you have that money. That money's been given to you over the course of the year. You're like, oh, I got to give them $5,000. Well, they gave you $5,000 that you wouldn't have been given in this one. So collected and given to you to file and remit. And they charged you $1,400 on top of the selling fees. Now you're like, oh, they charged me $1,400 on top of the selling fees. And let's say you still paid the $2,000 at the border. So it's really the same scenario, just whether or not you put the tax number in tax settings. Well, let's say here, this is where it gets interesting, folks. So tax on fees paid at the border. Generally speaking, you can use that as a credit. Meaning you collect $5,000, you have $3,400 in credits. You owe the government $1,600. So you give them $1,600, even though Amazon gave you $5,000. So in essence, your customer is paying you back throughout the year, not waiting until like midway through the following year to get paid back. You're getting paid back almost in real time. In fact, you're getting more in taxes that you're just going to put in your account and just hold on to it until you go to file the following year. And you don't give the full amount they gave you. They gave you 5,000 and you only give 1,600 because you got paid back for these things. This is one that you only have to pay regardless of, or this one you have to pay only if you put in your tax number. But this one you're going to pay regardless. If you figure out a way to not pay import taxes and not go to jail, please let me know. I'd be very curious about that. But I'll tell you this, all the customs brokerages, they're going to expect you to pay that. So think about that for a second. I don't want to use the term no interest loan because it's not, but you're getting money throughout the year, which makes sure you hang on to it and you give the appropriate amount to the appropriate professionals, because that's where you can get into hot waters if you don't give the money to the appropriate tax authorities, I should say. But you can subtract that out. And so basically your customers are paying you back for these things. So yes, you have to pay a little bit more in your fulfillment fees might be higher, but you're getting paid back for it like instantly because it's part of the transaction with the customer. If you think about that. So if your fulfillment fee is a little bit higher, well, the customer is also charged the GST and they're giving that to you. So, but you don't give it all and you wait until the following year around March. So there's nuances to that, and there's always, the ifs and then. So again, don't consider this tax advice because there's always weird nuances, and this is more for illustration purposes. But I am on scenario two. Everyone I recommend to, I shouldn't say recommend, everyone that talks to me about the situation, what should I do? I tell them this is what I do. And if I were in their shoes, I would most likely highly consider doing it this way, where you get the tax ID. So you're compliant because the rules didn't say if you're an Amazon seller, you don't have to worry about this. No, it still says get it. And you're going to be paying this money at the border. So you might as well get your money back. And cash flow wise, this one, you were hanging on to a net of $1,600 that you didn't have to worry about until the following year when you go to file. And this one, you're waiting to get your money back for like over a year, potentially up to a year, depending on how when the transactions happen. So hopefully that made sense. So if this has your mind thinking, do I really need to register? Do I really need to put the number in? I hope I gave you some food for thought. I know this is kind of long-winded, but hopefully that at least educated you with some things to think about as you do your own research. Now, if you are not yet in these marketplaces and you're thinking about like, hey, I would really like to consider this. I'd like to sell in Canada. I have a checklist where I'll walk you through all this. You can go to canadachecklist.com, which somewhere around here you should see in the description. A link to that as well, just so you can figure out like, okay, what are the steps to get launched in Canada? So Canada is a great marketplace for me. And like anything, all this stuff is really confusing and intimidating until you kind of break it down and understand how it works. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. And if it is, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel, and also checking out additional videos where we will help you expand into Canada and beyond. So wish you the best in your e-commerce journey as you build that global selling empire. Take care.